I never thought my family would resort to violence over money. But there I was, watching my $2,000 MacBook shatter against our dining room wall, pieces of its screen scattered across my mother's precious Persian rug. I'm Sarah Chin, 25, and up until that Sunday dinner, I thought I had a normal family. Dysfunctional, maybe, but normal. The day had started like any other Sunday. I'd driven to my parents' suburban home for our weekly family dinner, a tradition we maintained even after I moved out 3 years ago to start my career as a software developer. My older sister, Jessica, 28, was already there when I arrived, helping Mom in the kitchen while Dad watched football in his favorite armchair. "Sarah," Mom called out as I walked in, the smell of her famous pot roast filling the house. "Come taste the gravy. I think it needs more salt." Everything seemed normal, but there was an undercurrent of tension I couldn't quite place. Jessica barely looked up from her phone when I entered the kitchen, and Dad's usual cheerful greeting was replaced with a grunt. I should have known something was wrong right then. I brought my laptop with me because I had a deadline the next morning, a project I needed to finish after dinner. It sat innocently on the dining room table, next to the fancy plates Mom only used for special occasions. Why had she brought out the good china for a regular Sunday dinner? "Sit down, everyone," Dad announced once Mom brought out the pot roast. "We need to talk about something important." I took my usual seat, the one I'd occupied since I was old enough to sit at the adult table. Jessica sat across from me, finally putting her phone down, a strange smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "Sarah," Mom began, not touching her food, "we heard about Grandma Marie's inheritance." My stomach dropped. I'd received the news 3 days ago, but hadn't told anyone yet. Grandma Marie, Dad's mother, had passed away 2 months ago. She'd been my favorite person in the world, the only one who truly understood me, while the rest of the family saw me as the odd one out, the quiet, bookish daughter who preferred coding to socializing. Grandma Marie had celebrated my differences. "How did you find out?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Patterson called your father," Mom replied, referring to Grandma's lawyer. "He mentioned it in passing, thinking we already knew. $400,000, Sarah. Why didn't you tell us?" I pushed my pot roast around my plate, suddenly not hungry. "I was going to. I just needed time to process it." "Process what?" Jessica scoffed. "The fact that you're suddenly rich while the rest of us got nothing." That wasn't entirely true. Grandma had left Jessica her collection of antique jewelry, worth at least $50,000. Dad had received her house, which he promptly sold for a substantial sum. But they were right about one thing. I was the only one who'd received a significant cash inheritance. Grandma Marie had her reasons, I said quietly, remembering our last conversation in the hospital. She'd known then what she was doing, had explained it to me in whispers while the machines beeped around us. "What reasons?" Dad demanded, his voice rising. "What makes you so special?" The truth was, I knew exactly why Grandma had left me the money. Over the last 5 years, while the rest of the family visited her only on holidays and special occasions, I'd been there every week. I'd helped her with groceries, taught her to use an iPad to video chat with her friends, and spent countless hours listening to her stories about her youth. Most importantly, I'd been there when she discovered her terminal diagnosis, had helped her navigate the complex healthcare system, and had been by her side through every treatment. But I couldn't say any of this without sounding like I was accusing them of neglect. So I just shrugged. She wanted to help me start my own software company. She knew it was my dream. "Your dream?" Mom laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What about our dreams? Your father and I have struggled for years. We remortgaged this house to put you and your sister through college. And I've been paying you back," I protested. "Every month I send you money." "A pittance," Dad interrupted. $500 a month is nothing compared to what we spent on you." I felt my face grow hot. That $500 was a significant portion of my monthly salary, money I could have used for my own life, but instead sent to them out of guilt and obligation. "We've decided," Mom said, folding her hands on the table, "that the fair thing would be for you to share the inheritance. Split it 4 ways. You, Jessica, your father, and me. That's $100,000 each." I stared at them, wondering if this was some kind of joke. That's not what Grandma wanted. Who cares what she wanted? Jessica snapped. "She's dead. And it's not fair that you get everything while we get nothing." Nothing. I couldn't help but laugh. Dad got her house. You got jewelry worth more than my car, and now you want my inheritance too. It's not just about the money, Mom insisted, though it clearly was. It's about family, about doing what's right. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I'm sorry, but no, this money is mine. Grandma left it to me for a reason, and I'm going to use it the way she intended, to start my own company. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Dad stood up so suddenly his chair fell backward with a crash. You selfish little brat, he roared. After everything we've done for you. Before I could react, he grabbed my laptop from the table and hurled it across the room. The sound of it hitting the wall made me jump. Jessica had her phone out, recording everything with that same smirk on her face. Stop, I cried, standing up. What are you doing? Teaching you a lesson about family loyalty, Mom said coldly. If you won't share the inheritance, you're no daughter of ours. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone. You want to talk about family loyalty? Fine. Let's talk about what really happened in Grandma's last days. I pulled up the video I'd never wanted to show them, the security footage from Grandma's hospital room showing my parents and Jessica visiting her one last time, showing them pressuring her to change her will, threatening to put her in a nursing home if she didn't comply, showing Grandma, weak but determined, telling them she'd made her decision and it was final. Where did you get that? Jessica's phone lowered slowly, her smirk replaced by something close to fear. Grandma asked the hospital to install cameras after your first visit, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. She knew what you were trying to do. That's why she left the money to me, because I was the only one who loved her for her, not for what she could give me. The color drained from my mother's face. Dad sank back into his chair, all the fight gone from him. If you try to contest the will, I continued, standing up and gathering my broken laptop, this footage goes to Mr. Patterson. Grandma made sure he knew about it too. I walked to the door, stopping only to say one last thing. You know what the saddest part is? If you just asked me nicely, explained that you needed help, I probably would have shared some of it with you. But now I know exactly what kind of family you really are. The door slammed behind me with a satisfying bang. As I drove home that night, tears finally streaming down my face, I realized something. Sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't money at all. It's the clarity to see people for who they really are, and the strength to walk away when you need to. The next morning, I walked into my office at TechCore Solutions with my broken laptop and a canvas bag. My hands still shook slightly as I placed it on my desk, pieces of the screen clattering inside the case. My coworker Marcus glanced over from his cubicle, his eyebrows rising at the sight. Rough weekend? He asked, rolling his chair closer. I let out a hollow laugh. You could say that. My father threw my laptop at a wall. Marcus's jaw dropped. He did what? Why? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Another message from Mom. We raised you better than this. Your selfishness is breaking this family apart. I turned my phone face down without responding. Since last night, I'd received 37 messages from my family, guilt trips from Mom, angry demands from Dad, and thinly veiled threats from Jessica about exposing my true nature on social media. Family drama, I told Marcus, forcing a smile. Don't worry about it. But as I settled into my workstation, using my backup laptop from the office, I couldn't focus on the code in front of me. My mind kept drifting to Grandma Marie and our last real conversation, just a week before she passed. Sarah, dear, she'd said, her voice weak, but her eyes sharp as ever. I've watched you dim your light for years to keep the peace. Always making yourself smaller to make them feel bigger. It stops now. She'd reach for her bedside drawer, pulling out a thick envelope. This isn't just money I'm leaving you. It's freedom. Freedom to be who you are, to build what you dream of building. Don't let them take that from you. A message notification popped up on my screen, jolting me back to the present. It was from an unknown number. This is Aunt Linda. How dare you treat your parents this way after everything they've done for you? The whole family is disgusted. I felt my chest tighten. Aunt Linda had barely spoken to Grandma Marie in the last 5 years of her life, but now she had opinions about the inheritance. Everything okay? Marcus asked, noticing my expression. No, everything wasn't okay. My family was mobilizing against me, trying to pressure me into giving up my inheritance through a combination of guilt, threats, and social ostracism. But they underestimated one thing. I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. Actually, I said, straightening in my chair, I need to talk to HR about my notice period. Marcus's eyes widened. You're leaving. It's time. I managed a real smile this time. I'm starting my own company. The next few hours were a blur of meetings, first with HR, then with my immediate supervisor, and finally with the company's CTO, who'd always been supportive of my ideas. They were surprisingly understanding about my 2-week notice, though the CTO did try to tempt me with a promotion. Are you sure about this? He asked. You're one of our best developers. I thought about Grandma Marie's words, about dimming my light. I'm sure, I said firmly. It's time for me to build something of my own. By the end of the day, my resignation was official. As I packed up my desk, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jessica, and she escalated from messages to a full social media campaign. She posted an old family photo on Instagram with a long caption about how money changes people and destroys families, not so subtly implying that I was the destroyer in question. The comments were already rolling in. Distant relatives and family friends expressing their shock and disappointment in me. One comment from my cousin Beth particularly stung. I always knew there was something off about her. So quiet and antisocial. Now we know why. I took a deep breath and did something I'd never done before. I blocked them all. Every single family member except Grandma Marie's sister, Aunt Helen, who called me that morning to say she understood and supported my decision. That evening, instead of going home to my apartment, I drove to a small coffee shop downtown. I needed neutral territory to meet with Sophie Martinez, a business consultant I'd been corresponding with for months, long before Grandma's inheritance. Sophia was already there when I arrived, a sleek leather portfolio on the table in front of her. Sarah, she smiled, standing to shake my hand. I was excited to get your email. Ready to make this official. I sat down, pulling out my own notebook, the one where I'd been sketching out business ideas for years, more ready than ever. For the next 2 hours, we went over my business plan. I've been developing a software platform that would help small businesses manage their inventory and logistics more efficiently. It was something I'd seen the need for firsthand. Grandma Marie had struggled with her small antique shop's inventory for years before I created a basic version of the system for her. This is solid, Sophia said, reviewing my projections. With your inheritance as seed money, we could have this up and running within 3 months. But she looked at me carefully. Are you prepared for the personal cost? What do you mean? Starting a business is all-consuming. You'll need every ounce of energy and focus you have. Family drama can be distracting. I thought about the dozens of unread messages on my phone, the social media posts, the whispered family conversations that were undoubtedly happening right now. My family made their choice, I said firmly. Now I'm making mine. Sophia nodded approvingly. Then let's talk next steps. First, you'll need a good lawyer, not just for the business, but to protect your interests given the family situation. She was right. Even though I had the security footage from Grandma's hospital room, I couldn't put it past my family to try some legal maneuver to get their hands on the inheritance. I know just the person, Sophie continued, pulling out a business card. Diana Wright. She specializes in both business and family law. And trust me, you'll need both. As if on cue, my phone started ringing. Dad's number. I declined the call, but a text immediately followed. Your mother's crying herself sick. Is this what you want? To destroy our family over money? I showed the message to Sophia, who let out a low whistle. Classic manipulation. They're not upset about the family being destroyed. They're upset about losing control over you. She was right. This wasn't really about money, it was about power. For years, I'd been the quiet one, the obedient one, the one who sent money home every month without complaint. Now that I was standing up for myself, their whole family dynamic was crumbling. Call Diana first thing tomorrow, Sophia advised as we wrapped up our meeting. And Sarah, change your locks. Families like yours often have spare keys they've forgotten to mention. I drove home with a strange mix of emotions, fear, excitement, determination, and underneath it all, a profound sadness. Not for the loss of the family I had, but for the family I'd always wished they could be. As I pulled into my apartment complex, I noticed a familiar car in the visitors' parking, Jessica's red BMW. She was leaning against it, arms crossed, clearly waiting for me. For a moment, I considered driving away, but Grandma Marie's words echoed in my mind. It stops now. I parked and got out, gripping my keys tightly. What do you want, Jessica? To talk sense into you. She pushed off her car, walking toward me. This isn't you, Sarah. You've never been selfish before. No, I agreed, meeting her eyes. I've never put myself first before. That's what's really bothering you, isn't it? She flinched slightly but pressed on. Mom and Dad gave us everything. They deserve. They deserve what? I cut her off. The money Grandma specifically chose not to give them. The inheritance she left me because I was there for her while the rest of you were too busy. We had lives. Jessica protested. Jobs, families. I have a life too, I said quietly, and for the first time, I'm choosing to live it for myself, not for all of you. I walked past her toward my building, but her next words stopped me cold. If you do this, if you keep all the money for yourself, you'll never see any of us again. I turned back slowly, studying my sister's face. The sister who'd recorded our father throwing my laptop instead of trying to stop him. The sister who'd immediately launched a social media campaign to shame me into compliance. Is that a threat or a promise? I asked. Her face hardened. You're choosing money over family. No, I shook my head. I'm choosing myself over toxic relationships. There's a difference. I left her standing there in the parking lot, her reflected image growing smaller in the lobby's glass doors. Tomorrow, I would call Deanna Wright. Tomorrow, I would start building my company. Tomorrow, I would begin my new life. But tonight, I just sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, looking at old photos of Grandma Marie on my phone. In every single one, she was smiling directly at the camera, her eyes bright with a kind of confidence I was only now beginning to find in myself. I won't let them dim my light, Grandma, I whispered to the night sky. I promise. 2 weeks flew by in a blur of meetings, paperwork, and increasingly desperate attempts for my family to regain control. Diana Wright, the lawyer Sophia recommended, proved worth every penny of her considerable fee. Within days, she had set up an ironclad trust for my inheritance and drafted cease and desist letters to my family members. They're escalating, Diana said during our third meeting, spreading out printed copies of emails and social media posts from my family. Your sister's posts are bordering on defamation. And these emails from your parents, she tapped one particularly vitriolic message. They could be considered harassment. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache coming on. The latest email from Mom had been especially cruel. Your grandmother would be ashamed of what you've become. She's probably rolling in her grave seeing how greed has corrupted her favorite grandchild. Can we do anything about it? I asked. Diana nodded grimly. We can file for a restraining order if needed. But first, let's send them a formal warning. Sometimes the threat of legal action is enough to make people back off. As we discussed legal strategies, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My stomach dropped as I read it. This is Uncle Pete. Just wanted to let you know your mother's in the hospital. Stress-induced panic attack. Hope you're happy with what you've done. Diana noticed my expression. What is it? I showed her the message. She frowned, taking off her glasses. Sarah, this is a common manipulation tactic. They're trying to make you feel responsible for their emotional reactions to your legitimate boundaries. I know, I said quietly, but it still hurts. Of course it does. You're human. She leaned forward. But you need to stay focused. How's the business planning coming along? The business, my sanctuary in all this chaos. I pulled out my tablet and showed her the progress I'd made. The company name was officially registered, Inventec Solutions. I'd secured a small office space in a tech-friendly building downtown, and Sophia had helped me hire a small but talented team, 2 developers, a UI/UX designer, and a marketing specialist. We're starting development next week, I explained, feeling my enthusiasm return. The basic architecture is already mapped out, and... My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jessica, her message making my blood run cold. Hope you've backed up all your precious business plans. Would be a shame if something happened to them. Diana read the message over my shoulder. That's a direct threat. We're filing for that restraining order today. The next morning, I arrived at my new office early, wanting to set up before my team arrived. But as I approached the building, I saw a familiar figure waiting by the entrance, Dad. He looked older than I remembered, with more gray in his hair and deeper lines around his eyes. For a moment, I saw him as he used to be, the father who taught me to ride a bike, who came to every science fair, who bragged about his computer genius daughter to anyone who would listen. But then I remembered my laptop shattering against the wall, and my heart hardened. "You can't be here," I said, stopping several feet away. "Diana will be filing a restraining order today." "A restraining order?" He laughed bitterly. "Against your own father?" "Listen to yourself, Sarah. You've changed." "Yes, I have," I agreed. "I'm not letting anyone hurt me anymore, not even family, especially not family." "We never hurt you," he protested. "Everything we did was for your own good." Was throwing my laptop for my own good? Threatening me, turning the whole family against me. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "We were upset. You have to understand." "No, Dad. I don't have to understand. You have to leave, or I'm calling the police." As if on cue, the building's security guard stepped outside. "Everything okay, Miss Chen?" Dad's face darkened. "This isn't over, Sarah." But it was. As I watched him walk away, I felt something shift inside me, the last traces of guilt and obligation melting away like morning frost. Inside my new office, I threw myself into work. The team arrived one by one. Mike and David, the developers. Anna, the designer, and Jordan, our marketing guru. None of them knew about my family drama, and I intended to keep it that way. "Okay, team," I said once everyone was settled, "let's talk about our first milestone." For the next few hours, we were deep in discussion about database structures, user interfaces, and marketing strategies. It felt good, clean, like fresh air after being underwater too long. But around lunchtime, Jordan called me over to his desk. Sarah, you might want to see this." He pulled up a local business forum where Jessica had posted a long warning about me and my company. She twisted every fact, painting me as an unstable, untrustworthy person who had stolen from her family. "Want me to handle this?" Jordan asked. "I've dealt with reputation management before." I stared at the screen, at my sister's words designed to destroy not just my relationships, but my dreams. Something inside me snapped. "No," I said, pulling out my phone. "I'll handle it." I opened my email and began typing. "Dear family, I've tried to handle this privately, but you've left me no choice. If the harassment doesn't stop immediately, the messages, the social media posts, the showing up at my workplace, I will release the hospital security footage. All of it. Every minute of you threatening Grandma Marie, of you trying to force her to change her will. I will also pursue legal action for harassment and defamation. Diana has everything documented. This is your only warning. Sarah." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. "Everything okay?" Anna asked, noticing my hands shaking slightly. I took a deep breath. "It will be." That evening, as I locked up the office, I received a single text from Mom. "You win. We'll stop." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an acknowledgement of their behavior. But it was something, a white flag, however reluctant. I drove home in silence, thinking about Grandma Marie again. She told me once that the hardest part of standing up for yourself isn't the initial confrontation. It's maintaining your boundaries afterward, even when it hurts. As I parked outside my apartment, I noticed a small package by my door. For a moment, I tensed, but then I recognized Aunt Helen's handwriting on the label. Inside was a framed photo I'd never seen before. A young Grandma Marie standing in front of her first antique shop, looking proud and determined. With it was a note. "Dear Sarah, your grandmother faced the same kind of resistance when she started her business. Her family thought she was crazy to open an antique shop instead of staying home like a proper woman. But she did it anyway. You're more like her than you know. Love, Aunt Helen." I placed the photo on my desk, where I'd see it every morning. Tomorrow, I would continue building my company. Tomorrow, I would keep moving forward. But tonight, I finally let myself cry, not for the family I'd lost, but for the strength I'd found in losing them. 1 year later, I stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd gathered for Inventec Solutions' first anniversary celebration. Our small team had grown to 15 people, and our inventory management software was now used by over 300 small businesses across the country, including, ironically, the antique shop that had bought out Grandma Marie's old store. When I started this company, I began my speech Someone very wise told me that the hardest part wouldn't be building the business, but maintaining my boundaries. She was right about that, and so much more. From my position on the small stage, I could see Aunt Helen in the audience, beaming proudly. She had become my strongest supporter over the past year, sharing stories about Grandma Marie's early business days that helped me through my darkest moments. Success isn't just about profit margins or user numbers, I continued. It's about staying true to your vision, even when the people closest to you don't understand it. I did mention my family by name, but their absence was a palpable thing. The last I'd heard, through the family grapevine, Mom and Dad had moved to Florida, unable to face their friends after their behavior became known in our community. Jessica had gotten married in a lavish ceremony I wasn't invited to, funded by selling Grandma's jewelry. As I wrapped up my speech and stepped down from the podium, Sophia met me with a glass of champagne. "Your grandmother would be proud," she said, clinking her glass against mine. "She really would," Aunt Helen agreed, joining us. "Though I have some news you should know." She hesitated. "Your mother called me yesterday." My hand tightened on the champagne glass. "Oh." She asked if you'd be willing to meet with her. Just her, not your father or Jessica. She said she's been doing therapy, working through some things. I took a long sip of champagne, letting the bubbles settle in my stomach along with the unexpected news. "What did you tell her?" "That it was your decision. That you've built a beautiful life and a successful company without them, and you don't owe them anything." Aunt Helen touched my arm gently, but also that true strength sometimes means being open to change in others, even if we're not ready to trust them fully. Later that night, after the celebration had wound down and the last guest had left, I sat in my office, looking at Grandma Marie's photo. The determination in her eyes seemed different now, not just fierce independence, but also wisdom. The kind that knows when to hold firm and when to open a door, even just a crack. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to my mother's number, which I still had blocked. "Aunt Helen told me you called. I'm willing to meet for coffee. Just you. Just once. No discussions about money or the past. If you're interested, have Aunt Helen arrange it." I hit send before I could change my mind. My phone buzzed almost immediately with a text from an unknown number. "Mom, using a new phone. Thank you. That's more than I deserve." Maybe it was. But as I looked around my office at the evidence of everything I built by standing firm in my decisions, I realized I was strong enough now to set the terms of any future relationship. The scared, guilt-ridden daughter who had let her laptop be thrown against a wall was gone. In her place was someone Grandma Marie would recognize, a woman who knew her worth, who understood that true family supports your dreams instead of trying to crush them for their own benefit. I picked up the framed photo and added a small note of my own beneath it. "Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money, but the courage to bet on yourself." Standing at my office window, looking out at the city lights, I thought about everything that had happened since that Sunday dinner a year ago. My family had thrown my laptop at me, thinking they could break my spirit along with my computer. Instead, they'd broken the chains of obligation and guilt that had held me back for so long. My phone buzzed again. A message from Mike, our lead developer. "Final beta test successful. We're ready for the big release next week." I smiled, thinking of all the small business owners like Grandma Marie who would benefit from our software. In the end, she had given me so much more than money. She had given me the chance to make her proud, to help others the way she'd always wanted to. And maybe, just maybe, she'd known all along that sometimes you have to lose a family to find yourself.